creatures from the ancient past may still be lurking in the depths, and one of the most terrifying possibilities is the megalodon, the largest carnivorous shark in history. While many believe it went extinct long ago, others swear that it still roams the oceans today. From recent evidence suggesting its existence to shocking new discoveries, here are 20 times megalodon was caught on camera recently. Number 20. Shark attacks on humans. Easily, one of the biggest reasons that people really don't want the megalodon to be alive is because of how it's going to ramp up shark attacks on humans as a whole. While shark attacks are not as numerous as you may think, they do happen, and sometimes they can happen quite randomly. One such case was in South Africa back in 2004, where an elderly woman was going for a swim in her local suburb that she had done for almost 2 decades without fail. Yet, on this day, a great white shark attacked her and killed her. The swimming was so routine that a friend of hers was doing his own by walking around the area, and that's when he saw her in the water right on time. He said that he saw the shark's fin peeking out of the water, and in a matter of moments, the attack was over and the woman was gone. A search wouldn't even end up turning up her body, which should say quite a bit right there. Shark attacks are known to happen quite a bit in places like South Africa, but that's not the only thing that sharks are known to strike when the mood takes them. Number 19. Great white attack. I'm going to start this list off with a bit of a different way because instead of talking about the mighty megalodon right off the bat, I'm instead going to talk about the biggest carnivorous shark that you should fear in the world today, and that would be the great white. This is the infamous species of shark that has spawned numerous legends and tales, including the Spielberg film Jaws. And while these sharks are not quite as evil as Bruce, we can say that they can be very aggressive, even when it's the experts who are studying them. This case comes from 2012, where an expert is filming a special for Discovery Shark Week called Great White Open Ocean, and that expert in question is inside of a special plastic cage that he feels is going to protect him from the sharks. He's about to find out how very, very wrong that he is about that. At first, the shark merely bumps the cage to see what it might be like, and then, using the incredible power and speed in its body, it proceeds straight up to wreck that cage, leaving the expert barely staying afloat and having to call in for help to get him out of the water before the shark gets to him first. There is a lot to break down here, which includes the fact that the expert was fine, he was able to get to safety, and even use the close encounter with the great white to drum up excitement for Shark Week, whatever it does to get those ratings. The other key thing to note here is that this shark-proof cage was clearly not thought well enough out. You may recall that most cages of this nature are built out of steel and not plastic, and just to be clear, sharks, including great whites, have broken through steel cages in the past as well. This is one of the many reasons that people fear great whites, and they're barely a third of the size of the megalodon at its peak, so now just imagine a megalodon being around. Well, hold on to your underpants. Number 18. Deep sea sharks. Now, let's tackle this from a different angle. If people believe that the megalodon exists in today's oceans, the biggest question is not about how big they are but where they would be. If you recall a somewhat recent movie named The Meg, you would think that that movie posed that the shark wouldn't be living in the upper layers of the surface waters but instead way down in the deep depths of the ocean. So, is that where the megalodon is hiding today? Just as important, can sharks live in the crushing depths of the ocean? The answer to that second question is yes. In fact, there are numerous sharks that have been spotted both in incredibly deep waters of the ocean and in some of the deepest parts like the Mariana Trench. For example, back in August of 2024, some scientists were going down deep into the ocean via a submarine when they found themselves being examined by a shark. It was not a megalodon, or else the story would have probably led the video, but instead it was a shark known as the six-gill shark. The reason it's important is that this isn't just the oldest shark in its own order, but it's actually an incredibly primitive kind of shark known as a living fossil. That's because the creature is actually much older than you would expect in the species sense. By that, I mean that these kinds of sharks were around since before the time of dinosaurs, and since it's been around ever since, presumably, that would also mean that the six-gill lived when the megalodon was around. Now, to be clear, it is not as big as the megalodon by any stretch of the imagination, as the one recorded by the submarine was only 5 meters long. But even still, if you needed a submarine to go deep enough to find this particular shark, well, that shows that they can live deep in the dark depths of the Earth's oceans, and we know that there are more sharks down there. It just can't be proven that there's a megalodon. Number 17. Shark near the shore. Regardless of whether it's a megalodon, the great white, a tiger shark, or something else that feels as though it's locked in on killing a human, if a person sees a shark near the shore in any way whatsoever, they have a tendency to flip out. Case in point, in 2023, near Cornwall in the UK, a woman was with her family at a seaside resort when she saw the telltale signs of a shark near the shore. Equally as important, it wasn't only on the surface, it was near a bunch of boats, and so people were definitely nearby. The good news is that after taking a picture of the creature via the fins that were out of the water, people were able to identify it as a basking shark. That's good news because while the megalodon might have been the ultimate meat eater in the waters out there in the ocean, there are plenty of non-carnivorous sharks in the world today, and the basking shark is one of them. Plus, they can get nearly the size of a megalodon as they reach up to 15 meters at times. The one that this woman saw was not all that big, but that's not exactly the point. Seeing one of these gentle giants so near the shore is quite rare, and so it became a very special experience. Ironically, a group of seals that were nearby did not feel the same way, as they were apparently hiding out from the shark. Number 16. The biggest great white. As I've shown you before, the great white shark is a creature that many people do fear, and that many have wondered just how big they get. While the sizes vary depending on where the shark is and where it's potentially captured, I can tell you about specific ones that blew the world's minds in one way or another. For example, the tail of Big Blue is that of the largest great white shark ever recorded on camera. This one was 6 meters in length, and equally important, it was a 50-year-old female shark that was pregnant. Talk about stacking the deck to be special. She was found off Mexico's Guadalupe Island, and once the video of the encounter with her via the divers that were with her went onto the internet, well, it of course went viral, and that shouldn't be all that surprising. There are some surprising things to be mentioned, though. One such thing to note is that the female great whites are actually larger than their male counterparts more times than not. However, whenever you see a great white shark attack or see one getting caught by a fisherman, it's a male almost every single time. That's a great mystery that many people are still trying to figure out. Where do female great whites go while the males are doing their thing? Equally as important and almost as impressive is that the divers in this clip were actually able to get really close to the great white, and it didn't mind them at all. The two species even high-fived at one point, which is not something you would expect from such a large shark. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be able to do this with a megalodon, so once again, be grateful that great whites have at least a few advantages on their ancient predecessor. Number 15. Shark versus submarine. I previously talked about how a submarine was able to get a good look at an ancient shark, but now I'm going to show you how a shark got really up close and personal with a submarine. Ironically, the scenario was actually almost identical to the story from before with this kind of shark. The sub in question was over 700 meters below the surface, and it stumbled upon a group of 6 gill sharks. This was a history-making moment last time, but this time, it turns into almost a horror film. The sharks in question are actually feeding, as they had found the body of a sperm whale, which they were more than happy to end up devouring. Where the sub-attack comes in is that these 6 gill sharks felt that the submarine was actually trying to get in on their meal, so they reared up and began to swarm it. Not only did they swarm, but they actually started ramming that submarine with their heads. Even the people on the inside knew that the sharks could potentially break the viewing window, and that would end up causing all kinds of problems. Eventually, those sharks did back off and the submarine crew got away safely, but it was anything but easy. Now it's time for today's topic. Off the coast of Guadalupe Island, a group of experienced divers descended into the depths, hoping to capture stunning photographs of great white sharks. They had done this dive over 100 times before, but this time something wasn't right. As they waited in the cage, the usual great whites lurking around them suddenly disappeared, as if sensing something even more fearsome. Then, out of the darkness, it appeared. A shark, massively built, with scars running down its pale, almost ghostly skin, circled their cage. It was unlike any known species. Its black, unblinking eyes seemed to study them, and its body was larger than any great white they had ever seen. The crew above watched in horror as the creature rammed the cage, denting the metal bars. Just as panic set in, the safety team reacted fast, yanking the cage out of the water before it could be crushed. By the time they resurfaced, the strange shark had vanished into the deep. Was it a surviving megalodon? Or something that had been lurking in the abyss for centuries? Waiting? One thing is certain, no one wants to go back down there. Number 14. Megalodon extinction. Given that so many people think that the megalodon actually exists today, it becomes important to note and chronicle when the megalodons were said to have gone extinct. According to scientists, the giant sharks lived 23 to 3.6 million years ago. So, yeah, that's quite a long time span and a long time ago, not just in a galaxy far, far away. These were, as noted before, apex predators, so they were not exactly wiped out by another species, and that leaves the question of what actually did kill them. Most scientists believe that it was a mixture of climate change and a simple out due to hunters during the latter parts of their existence. The Earth was undergoing a massive cooling, which heavily affected the waters that the megalodon would exist in and also the other creatures that lived in those waters as well. The sharks were known to swim in more warm waters, and those were getting cooler and colder, and that likely limited the range that the megalodon had and what it was able to consume. And when you can't eat well, you end up dying. There are even those who feel the megalodons may have been cannibals that ate each other in order to try to satiate that hunger, and if that was done in large numbers, it's no wonder why they ended up dying out in the end. Number 13. Whale shark. I told you that whales and sharks have more things in common than what you may think, even when it comes to the megalodon, and when it comes to the being known as the whale shark, it's actually stated to be bigger in the present day than the megalodon ever was in its time. At 18.8 meters, it is the largest confirmed whale shark that's ever found, and they're not exactly measured regularly, so they could easily be quite bigger. Just as important, the true length of the megalodon is a heavily debated topic, so it could have been much shorter than the 20 meters that many would predict. The other twist is that, while the whale shark is the size of the megalodon by most accounts, it's a filter feeder, and that means that it eats the smallest of ocean creatures in order to survive, the exact opposite of the megalodon. They do dine mostly on plankton and small fish and swim with their wide mouths agape to scoop up any kind of tiny organisms in one of nature's most efficient feeding systems. And despite being sharks, the whale sharks are non-aggressive, posing no threat to humans. They're known for their calm demeanor, often allowing divers and snorkelers to swim alongside them for unforgettable encounters. It becomes a surreal experience to share the water with such a massive yet peaceful creature. One of the most striking features would be its unique pattern of spots and stripes. The markings are like fingerprints, and no two are exactly alike. Researchers use these patterns to identify and track individual sharks, which aids in conservation efforts. Unfortunately, though, they are listed as endangered due to threats like bycatching and fishing gear, boat strikes, and habitat destruction. But conservation groups and ecotourism initiatives are in place in order to try and protect them. Number 12. Clues to Megalodon. While I've talked about the megalodon in various ways, it is also important to ask why some people believe that it still exists in today's world, given that there are no true sightings that are meaningful. Well, there have been clues that do point to something like that, like the megalodon existing in the world, and I do mean actual clues and not just conspiracy theories from internet nut jobs. In the case of one shark attack in 2019, a mako shark was somehow and some way bitten in half near Australia. Now, I'm not joking. A fisherman pulled out the head of that mako shark, and it had clear signs that the rest of its body had actually been bitten off and not chopped. Obviously, that becomes a huge problem, as makos, including the one from Australia, well, they can be about 4 meters in length, and they're one of the more aggressive sharks in the world today. As such, it would take something pretty powerful and big to be able to bite such a large shark's head off that cleanly. The irony here is that there have been multiple cases of these kinds of shark attacks in the past, and all of them do point to a certain super predator that lurks in the deep. And while we obviously can't say that it was a megalodon that caused these attacks, there has to be something killing the sharks like this. Number 11. Shark versus cage. Remember when we saw that sharks have been known to rip through steel cages that were designed to keep them out? Well, here's a case in point. This was another piece of footage that was taken for Discovery Channel Shark Week specifically. They were looking for a shark serial killer and indeed may have found that shark in question. The expert then went into the shark cage, and then the shark showed up, and as you can see, that shark goes from merely checking out the cage to ripping off one of the flotation devices and then trying to get inside of the cage itself, which it nearly does. Eventually, it does go away, but other divers have not been so lucky, and if the shark kept on going, it likely would have ended up getting in. Number 10. Double Trouble. Remember that movie, The Meg? Well, one of the twists of that film was that the people dealing with the megalodon soon had to deal with a second one, which is not fun even for Jason Statham. In this case, a diver allegedly came into contact with 2 great white sharks at the same time, or at least that's what they claim. There seems to be some disconnect on whether or not that was actually going on, but we'll just let it go for now. The sharks in question were allegedly both 6 meters long, which meant that they absolutely dwarfed the diver that was attempting to film all of everything. But thankfully, he wasn't hurt in the experience. But really, could you imagine what you would feel if 2 great whites of that size came at you? The phrase shaking in your dive suit would not even be able to cut it. Number 9. Megalodon fossil. It's important at this point in the video to highlight a key question that you may have about the megalodon and then promptly answer it. Specifically, you may be asking, how do we even know that the megalodon existed in the first place? Well, the simple answer is that we have numerous fossils that do prove its existence, and just as important, we got these fossils from unique places that you would have never guessed. For example, a bunch of teeth fossils were found in Chile's Atacama Desert, and it's apparently a haven of those kinds of things. Now, if you are wondering why there are teeth fossils in a desert, that's actually pretty easy to answer. It was found near the desert that was close to the Pacific Ocean, and so once upon a time, millions of years ago, this area of the world was likely more underwater than it was right now. Then, as those water levels receded for one reason or another, the bones and remains of the megalodon broke down, and they would soon find themselves not in the water but in the sand. And with so many of these teeth being found, it's easy to compare them and see which shark they had belonged to. In this case, it was the megalodon. In fact, the megalodon actually means big teeth, which is appropriate as these things are literally huge. One of the biggest ones ever found in South America was actually over 7 centimeters in length, and that is quite the twist. So now, just picture a shark that wasn't only 20 meters long but potentially had rows upon rows of teeth like this. That shark was one of the apex predators of the ancient world, and it could pretty much eat anything that it wanted anytime that it wanted to. Oh, and the megalodons, well, they were known for their ravenous hunger, so they were inclined to eat a whole heck of a lot. And while it can't be said for certain that these sharks live in the modern day, we absolutely know that they existed way back when. Number 8. Do sharks like surfers? One of the more classic kinds of shark attacks on humans is that of sharks, especially great whites, going after surfers. Now, to be clear, sharks have attacked surfers over the years, including one famous attack that left a woman without a lot of her arm. However, to say that sharks go after surfers is a bit of a misnomer. Many could point to this as the Jaws effect, the effect of people being afraid of going into open water because of sharks. Yet, as noted before, there are not as many attacks on humans by sharks as you may think. The best thing to do if you're a surfer is just to be mindful of where you're surfing and what's around you. Now, of course, if it was a megalodon coming in after you, you're probably already dead the moment that it ends up laying its eyes on you. Number 7. Shark on shark violence. If you recall during the megalodon extinction topic that I mentioned before, it's believed that the ancient shark might have even eaten its own at certain points in its life. The irony is that this kind of thing does happen with other sharks, including great white sharks attacking one another for personal and prideful reasons. In Guadalupe, there is a shark that is so distinctive in its looks that it was known as Bite Face, and no, it was not named by a 5-year-old student. The reason for this is that it was one of the smaller great white sharks of the area, and it refused to back down to the bigger great whites. So, those sharks would go and bite that shark so that it would have to learn its lesson. It never truly did, and thus it has a bunch of scars all over its face. But even still, it made the shark famous, so perhaps it was worth it in the end. Number 6. Divers and sharks. Now, without a doubt, one of the biggest dangers when you're going scuba diving is encountering a shark. It doesn't have to be a great white or anything of that nature, as certain sharks will attack if they feel threatened or that their pups are in danger. Over in Malta in 2019, a group of divers were having fun near a coral reef when they suddenly found themselves in the presence of a great white shark. The reason that this was particularly shocking is that those waters are known to be rather cold, and great whites don't typically wander into such conditions, and so it was a true unknown as to what it would do if it even got closer. Thankfully, after they had scurried away a bit, the shark let the people be. But that could have been so much worse if certain events had played out slightly differently. Number 5. The most aggressive great white. One key similarity between great white sharks and the infamous megalodon is that they are aggressive creatures. That's what made them such a terror of the deep. Back in 2013, where we are here at Shark Week again, they decided to go after one of these legendary aggressive great whites off the coast of New Zealand. In these waters lay a creature that was known as Slash, and he was indeed touted as the most aggressive great white shark in the world. His reputation came from his frequent appearances near fishing boats and research vessels, where he displayed unusually bold behavior. Slash was also easily recognizable due to the massive scar running down his side, a battle wound likely inflicted by another shark or a human encounter. His aggression wasn't just for show. Scientists recorded multiple instances where he lunged at cameras and research equipment, earning him his fearsome reputation. Despite his notoriety, researchers emphasized that great whites, including Slash, were not mindless killing machines but highly intelligent predators with distinct personalities. The footage captured during Shark Week showcased his raw power and hunting techniques, making him an instant sensation among marine enthusiasts. He was so talented that Discovery Channel made him the poster shark of the week. And while they did get footage of Slash in action, including with his legendary scar that humans had given to him, the scientists were sure to note that while they did have plenty of great whites in the area, including Slash, the number of attacks was actually pretty low. Number 4. Carcass rescue. Now, let's head to Italy to talk about a 70-ton whale carcass that was discovered and then had to be removed by several pieces of heavy equipment. The body was first found in the water, and then it floated to the surface and washed to shore. Marine biologists and local authorities were immediately called in to assess the situation, as the sheer size of the whale made its removal an enormous challenge. The decomposing body had already begun attracting scavengers, and the strong odor of decay spread for miles, forcing officials to act quickly. Experts believe the whale had been dead for at least a week before it was discovered, possibly due to natural causes, entanglement in fishing nets, or a ship collision. After multiple failed attempts to tow it back into deeper waters, the decision was made to carefully dismantle and transport the remains by land. Teams of scientists took the opportunity to collect tissue samples for research, hoping to learn more about the whale's health and diet before its death. Most would agree that it was likely one of the biggest whale carcasses that was ever found in the region of the Mediterranean. As for what they wanted to do with the body once they recovered it, They wanted to get the whale skeleton since it had obviously had a full one and then put it into a museum. Number 3. Shark versus boat. If a megalodon were alive today and attacked a standard fishing vessel, that boat would likely be gone pretty quick. However, in Tasmania, we got to see the closest thing to that via a great white shark that suddenly attacked a fishing boat. The boat itself was helmed by a seasoned fisherman and his son, who then went to a nearby island to look at some seals. As they neared the rocky outcrop, the ocean beneath them seemed calm, but that changed in an instant when the massive predator emerged from the depths. The great white, measuring around for meters, launched itself at the side of the boat, slamming into it with enough force to send shockwaves through the vessel. The impact was so strong that the boat rocked violently, nearly throwing the father and son overboard. In a moment of sheer panic, they watched as the shark briefly retreated, only to circle back, its massive dorsal fin cutting through the water like a blade. The father quickly revved the engine, trying to put distance between them and the aggressive predator, but the great white wasn't done yet. Then, suddenly, a roughly 4-meter great white shark rammed into the boat, and it actually came out of the water to show its face to the scared duo. The boat itself was said to be 5 meters, so it could have gone the shark's way if it had not decided to leave after a while. After the attack, the two people then went home. Number 2. The goblin shark. While the megalodon is one of the oldest sharks to ever exist, it is not the only old one that's in the waters. In fact, there are some that came before it that do still exist today. I've already shown one in the 6 gill, but another one to take note of would be the goblin shark. This is another deep-sea terror that has been around for allegedly 125 million years, and yes, it does still exist today in the deep, dark depths of the deep. Unlike other sharks that rely on speed, the goblin shark uses a stealthy approach, lurking in the darkness and waiting for the perfect moment to ambush its prey. Its snout is covered in electroreceptors, allowing it to detect the faintest electrical signals from nearby fish, making it an efficient and patient hunter. When the moment is right, its jaws extend with lightning-fast precision, snapping forward to snatch up its unsuspecting prey before retracting back into its grotesque-looking face. The goblin shark's pinkish, almost translucent skin adds to its eerie appearance, making it look like something straight out of a nightmare. Since it prefers to dwell at depths of over 4,000 feet, encounters with humans are rare, but the few times they have been caught or washed up, they've only fueled the mystery surrounding them. Some scientists believe that its sluggish nature and odd anatomy may be remnants of an ancient evolutionary lineage that has changed very little over millions of years. What arguably makes the shark more scary than the megalodon, despite its massively smaller size, is the fact that it's known to extend its mouth out of its body in order to be able to snatch up its prey. That's right, this shark is basically a xenomorph like in the Alien films, and I have a burning desire to just move on. Number 1. Attacked whale. Now, how does a whale tie into a megalodon? Well, it would be more than you think, actually. While the megalodon may have been an apex predator, you can have more than one in a region, and in the ancient waters, the whale known as the Leviathan was the sole creature that could take on a megalodon and actually live. Fast forward to now, and whales continue to surprise us, such as when this beached whale washed ashore in Oregon, and was found to not only be tangled up, but also had been apparently attacked by a killer whale. As marine biologists examined the carcass, they noted deep rake marks along the whale's body, consistent with the bite patterns of orcas, leading them to believe that it had been in a life-or-death struggle before washing ashore. The presence of tangled fishing nets around its tail raised further concerns about human impact, suggesting that the whale may have already been weakened before the attack. Strangely, the whale's stomach was nearly empty, indicating it may have been struggling to find food for some time before its demise. This led to theories that environmental changes or shifting prey populations may have played a role in its declining health. The combination of human-related entanglement, possible starvation, and a killer whale attack painted a grim picture of the whale's final days. Scientists are now using this case as an opportunity to study the long-term effects of ocean pollution and climate change on whale populations. Sadly, that whale was dead when it was discovered, and it apparently was rather thin for a whale of its type, leaving even more questions about what had really happened to it in the end. Which of these shark incidents surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.